that's fair. I mean, I'm just saying no one would want to do this show. Hey, everybody, we're back. Welcome to the O Menos Mexicanos podcast. I'm Sammy Gonzalez, a.k.a. the Mexcellence, our inaugural episode. It's going to be a great time, and I just want to say welcome, everybody. We're releasing a whole flurry of new content here at the Mexcellence, so we hope you subscribe, do all those things. Just follow us at the Mexcellence. But you know what? Marcos, you're the lead here, so introduce yourself and then introduce the rest of the cast, because everyone knows me because they hear my voice all the time.
Well, the issue with that is they hear my voice just as much at this point because I've been on the Mexcellence podcast for a year and a half now. No, 2 years. But I am the co-host, co-captain, and this was just kind of my idea, just in the sense that we, because half our hosts are black, there's a lot of black media and a lot of black narratives about like what it's like to be black in America. There's not a lot or close to none about what it's like to be Hispanic or Mexican or Latinx, whatever term you want to use. It all goes into the mess of what does it mean to be Mexican? Because, hey, man, we can't even get a label down right. Like,
right. Just you saying all of those made me uncomfortable that we were going to get canceled. I'm just because I don't know. And the thing is, which is going to be interesting once we go into it, is that it seems like all of us are right in kind of that in between where we're all kind of like, oh yeah, we can still learn new things, and then slowly but surely getting locked into our old habits. So let's go ahead and finish our introductions here. Joining us, didn't do it right. Down in the diagonal, the 30 spot, we have joining us for the third time and hopefully many more times.
Yeah, hi, what's up, guys? My name's Alyssa. This is like Sam said, it's my third time on the podcast. Super excited to be here. And then to my right.
Other way.
Oh.
And this is our special guest in our fourth rotating seat on this podcast, MJ. Because this gentleman here has a very similar name. It's the exact same. It was like, hey, man, I got a cool pool. And so Marco, our special guest today, hopefully it's not confusing the audio listeners. Marco, how do you pronounce your last name? And let us know what you do and what you are and how you been.
So my last name's Lopez. I put Marco Skag because that's how I put myself on Facebook or whatever. The whole Marco thing, I don't know if it's weird because I never respond to Marcos, but I've learned to respond to Marcos because like everybody always calls me Marcos anyway.
Right. And we call him Mark, Marky, Marco, Marcos, Marky Mark. He just answers to all of it, so we just take our pick.
You know what would be easier if you can pronounce it in Spanish. I introduce myself to people like me llamo Marco.
Okay.
Not Marco.
Gotcha. Okay. The guy with the American flag, Marco. The guy who had some cool artwork in the background, I saw. Marco. Got it. I don't know much Spanish. If not, actually, no, I don't know any Spanish, but I can say things with the accent. So, MJ, let's just do it that way for now. Go ahead and get us started. I mean, you have everything written down. You have the format of this show, and you want to, let's take us where we are.
I figured this was, as opposed to the political podcast that we did for the first time last week, a different kind of a horse, because this isn't about stats and figures. It's about how do you, as a person today, what parts of you help identify as Mexican American? And what I was trying to do was get a conclave of different people. Alyssa is very familiar with Latinx. You're from California, and your whole Mexican experience is different from the rest of us. And then Marco, as an activist, and then just with what we were going on in the pre-show, has had a completely different experience from the three of us. So what you grab that makes up a culture that makes you Mexican is different from almost anything else.
Right. So how do you want to start how we position? Are we just going to be like, hi, I'm Sam, and I'm Latinx? Are we going to do that, or how are we going to do that? Because I'm curious, because it's hard to come up with what we are, because there's so many dang definitions of us, and there's so many different countries that we're accounting for in the overall scope of things. So here, the show is Mexicanos because we're Mexicanos, but...
Well, let's start with the easy one, because you're already getting called out for this in the chat.
Oh.
Do you know Spanish?
and learn Spanish, damn it, which I've heard my entire life. So let's start with myself. Sammy Gonzalez, born and raised in Fresno, California, salt of the earth, farm workers, and all that stuff. I identify, I think, the most accurate definition for me at the time where I said, all right, I'm sticking to this one, is Chicano. Now, Chicano has a lot of weight to it because if you look at the history of the term Chicano by definition is not necessarily even an ethnicity, because you could be white, you could be black, and be Chicano, but it's essentially the culture that's identified with American-born first, second gen, third gen people. And so that was when they started identifying it. I want to say it was 30s, 40s, around World War II is when like Chicano started being like a term that people would use for themselves. And from there, you got like the zoot suits and all that kind of thing and that kind of look. And then that eventually snowballed into like the Chicanos when you think about like of the 90s, headbands, tank tops, khakis and long socks and cholos and stuff like that. I've never been any of that despite this shirt, but it's just it's most accurate to me because I'm not born from Mexico. I'm not first a gen, a second gen. I'm third gen. My grandparents were born here except for one, and even then that was just they were visiting Mexico. She was born there, then brought back to the States. So I'm about as American as apple pie, but nobody sees me as that because they're like, oh, what are you? I'm American. No, but what are you? And then Mexican. And then I don't speak Spanish. That's a whole other element of my identity, which we'll get to later.
Well, it's just really weird that, I mean, well, not weird, or, I mean, yeah, no, I'm going to go with weird. I'd never heard Chicano as a descriptive term my entire life. Like, it was Hispanic my entire life. And then it grew into something else.
Right. And from my understanding, Hispanic is a census term, which is of Spanish origin. So that's
probably why.
Right. And Texas loves using official terms for weird things. And then, you know, our friend Ray, he calls himself Hispanic. And we don't call ourselves Hispanic unless we're filling out the paperwork for the government. Like when you're doing your SATs or whatever, it's like, what are you? Which always confused me. Whereas like I'm black, white, Pacific Islander, Asian, white, and then having quotes, not Hispanic. And it's like, wait, what? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Hispanic or / Latino. That was our choices growing up. And so I've always been Hispanic, Latino, check, and not white, not Hispanic, whatever. Leave that alone.
I always liked Emiliano Zapata's version of, or whenever he would say like, no me llames hispano porque no soy de Latinoamérica, no me llames
Latino.
Latino. No me llames latino porque no soy de Latinoamérica, no me llames hispano porque no soy de España, llámame mexicano.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think you already got the ball. Just run with it. I mean, I want to hear what you have to say, especially when. So for those that are uninitiated, so Marco plays for a band called Los Skagaleros, and they are a ska band from McAllen. Would you say McAllen is a city you rep?
Yeah, I'd say that. Let's just make that one as the central one. We're all kind of from like Edinburgh, McAllen.
Oh, cool.
There you go.
I have friends from Edinburgh, but yeah, it's a ska band, and you may not know them as much for the music, but you have definitely heard of the causes that they've supported, like your network for what you've done to support the people, animals, shelters, turtles, like is amazing.
It's definitely like I think they go hand in hand. I think like I know when I wanted to start this band, like I had this background of like hearing political music, but like I felt like they weren't interconnected, and I know that there were some bands that would do political things, like Anti-Flag, for example. They would participate in protests, and I felt that I wanted to do something with my music, and I think that kind of drew in like the rest of the Skags, for example, like that it wasn't just like we're gonna talk about politics, but nah, man, we're gonna actually like be activists too and use our music and see if we can do something with it. And I think that's what kind of like, at least here in the Valley, it's like got us a lot of popularity.
Awesome.
No,
I mean, this is almost another topic for another episode that I'd like you to come back to, and it's just the Valley. What do we do about it? It's the most ignored part of probably the entire country. There's I don't think there's any. Well, there's definitely no major colleges. Maybe there's community colleges. There's no industry. I think I just saw a Vice special. I think it was about Presidio being like the most impoverished place in the entire United States.
No shit. I know that a lot of people don't they ignore us, right? They ignore us financially, like in political sense. Like financially, they don't fund the Valley a lot, but politically, we're still like the talk of everybody, right? They're militarizing our border. There's a bunch of freaking cops here, a bunch of DPS. Mm-hmm. Like there's cops everywhere here. I'm actually going to I work at a nonprofit, and we're going to be going to Rio Grande City. Governor Abbott recently just released a bunch of like DPS troopers to come to the Valley, and I swear to God, man, like every freaking, it's not even like every quarter mile you'll see a freaking DPS like officer, and they're like, it sucks because they're using our money for that, and they're just sitting in the freaking cars. They're not doing anything about the immigration, like the people coming in. It's not like helping, and it's not like, it's hurting for sure, like when they start separating families, but it's not helping like them, you know, like, or it's not helping us either because we're using that money when it could be used like for infrastructure, for example.
Right. Like it could be used for infrastructure, and instead it's being used to like, hey, you ran that stop sign, or just dumb.
They end up stopping, like they become kind of like a menace. They end up stopping the regular folk, and they're kind of like, well, you're supposed to be looking out for us for the border, but you're kind of stopping me for speeding. Right. And it's kind of like it's kind of dumb. Like it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Another thing that I saw in the news about the Valley recently was that Elon Musk was trying to take over Boca Chica Beach and like just privatize it and build like his own city or something like that.
Right. And
yeah, he was definitely like he recently gave $30 million to the city of Brownsville to like develop downtown area of Brownsville. And it just sucks, man, because since we're really poor, you know, 30 million is like a lot of money. And like, what are we supposed to say? Like, how dumb would we be if we said like, no, man?
Right. Well, the worst outcome of that is I had a ex-girlfriend who lived out in Wisconsin, where they were doing like that whole Foxconn stuff, where they put a bunch of money into factories, being like, we're going to take it all away from China. Then they just abandoned it. And then the city got foot with a bill. And so, like, there's a huge thing where Elon Musk, he's like a 12-year-old, where he'd be like, all right, I'm going to go here, and I'm going to make this whole area my big oasis of technology and jobs. And then he could just be like, I changed my mind. Bye. Because the power system can't hold energy, which we're finding out in February. and apparently there's warnings of it for this summer about how we're all going to die from overheating. So that's exciting. I'm looking forward to that because as a Californian, I know a thing about rolling blackouts, and I love those.
It sucks, man. Like a lot of people died from the freeze that we had here.
I joke to keep from crying.
It's fucked up. Like I didn't think it was that. I mean, I knew it was bad, but I didn't know that it got that bad. You know. Mm-hmm. You know, the Elon Musk thing. Like I love science and I love space. For a long time, like I always argue this whole thing of intersectionality, of how we're all supposed to be like on the same page. Like as an activist, like if one group's against something, we all got to be against it. Well. Here comes Elon Musk, and I love space, right? And all my friends started calling me out because I'm like,
right?
Because I was like, dude, the rockets, like I'm so like infatuated by these fucking rockets.
Space Mexicans. I want space Mexicans. That's what I want.
Yeah, that dude, 100% space Mexicans, because like we're not there yet,
right?
And that's like that was my whole point, right? But then the little bastard decides to say that he wants to outsource fucking people. And not fucking educate and support the local like labor force,
right?
Like to educate us so we can be fucking astronauts, which has been like a fucking dream since I was little, right?
Right.
And so when that happened, I was like, man, fuck SpaceX. Like I'm down. I wanted to like market. I have this like sticker that says like no border wall, no ice, and no SpaceX. And I told friends, I was like, I'm just gonna like Sharpie the SpaceX. It out. But like now I'm just like, nah, man, fuck them. Like they don't want to fucking like help us like get ahead. Like that's not cool, man. Like we're, you know, people come to the valley because they like exploiting us, and supposedly we're very content people, and we don't fucking like we take shit. We'll take fucking 50-cent jobs just to fucking like picking fruits because we need to survive, right? Like,
right.
And it's real screwed up. Like, and people take advantage of that. Like, they'll bring the jobs, right? But it's never fucking jobs that are like $15 an hour. It's fucking $7.25 jobs. That's why they bring the jobs. So they could exploit the shit that they could be paying somebody $21 in another state.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's a little bit of the background kind of for that area, which is very similar to the Central Valley in terms of farm workers, labor being exploited, all that stuff. And we'll get into kind of how that affects how we identify ourselves a little bit further. But Alyssa, you being, out of the same area, right? Same area as them growing up, kind of the border, or where'd you grow up?
So we're actually, us and Marco are separated by about 4 or 5 hours. We're from Eagle Pass.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know where that is. Yeah. The only thing we're famous for is the casino, really.
Yeah, that's what I think of Eagle Pass. Like, that's it, the only thing that's there.
Basically, man.
So
that's your job. That and maybe
that was our SpaceX that came to our city and then just took over all the jobs, and like, because honestly, I can't think of one person from my hometown that I grew up with that doesn't work in the oil fields, is a teacher, something in the government. Like JJ's brother works in charge of deeds or whatever for the city, or the casino. That's it. That's all the jobs that are there.
I'm not going to talk shit about the casino though, because I don't like. It's not an out-of-town investor. Like the Kickapoo tribe own it, don't they?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not trying to talk about it. It's not as bad as SpaceX, but I just meant in the sense that, like, if it wasn't for that, I don't know what the fuck Eagle Pass would be. Quemado is what it would be.
What are they paying the workers, man? That's what I'll argue.
They actually get paid more than probably anything else you can find in the city that doesn't involve putting yourself at danger, like being a security guard or something like that. And I don't mean a security guard at the mall. I mean at the prison.
Jeez. There's a prison in Eagle Pass?
Every county has a prison.
Oh, I guess. I mean, California does it real big. We have our big giant facility, so it's like, oh, that's weird that's such a small place has a prison.
Well, it's just a county prison, but still, you get paid like $25 to work there because you might get stabbed, or I mean, honestly, in this year, not to get too into sidetracked again, you're pretty likely to catch COVID if you work in that situation.
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, I think in all prisons, you're more than likely going to catch COVID.
Right, because we don't take care of our prisoners, which is another argument for another day we'll get into. But Alyssa, I guess that leads to you now. How do you identify yourself, and what's kind of part of your upbringing of how you choose to identify yourself in that way?
Yeah. So my last name is Bunting, and that's obviously not Mexican at all. I'm a quarter white.
Traitor.
But on my mother's side, I am a second generation. I like to identify as Tejana, honestly. It's
nice
what
sidebar.
I feel.
Nice little nice little specific identifier that people are familiar with, thanks to Selena.
Yeah. Well, so what's really interesting to me is that, like, I identified as, like, Mexicana,
right.
For the longest time. And it wasn't until I was overseas and I was having like a really nice conversation because our server was Puerto Rican. And like, I was like, oh my God, yes, like someone who like speaks the same language as me.
Right.
And I think he kind of felt the same way. And he was asking like where we were from. And we're like, oh, we're Mexicana. We're from Eagle Pass, Texas. And then he was like, oh, so you're not Mexicana, you're Tejana. And then after that, I was kind of like, yeah, no, I am Tejana. That is like what I am most comfortable with. But on my mom's side, I am second generation. My mom's mom is from Piedras Negras, right across from Eagle Pass.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom's dad is from Sabinas, a little bit further into Mexico. My dad's mom is from San Benito, down in the valley.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandfather, I believe, is from Mississippi. But growing up in Eagle Pass, I lived with my grandparents on my mom's side for the first half, I would say up until like kindergarten.
Mhm.
So my first language was Spanish.
Right.
And that was really fun. What was really interesting is I moved to the Valley. I moved to Harlingen during 4th grade. And for whatever reason, I lost all of my Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
I
In
couldn't.
Harlingen?
Yeah, in Harlingen. I was really surprised to like in my elementary class, it might have just been like the school I was at or what it was, but
Do you remember what grade you were in?
what grade I was in 4th grade.
Say 4th grade, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if this was the case, and also a lot of this has to go back with like I don't remember being 9, but I remember I used to be like my uncle, my tios and tias would be like, you were the perfect bilingual child, but I mean I was put in like the advanced classes or whatever is advanced at 1st grade,
Right.
and I was literally punished for speaking Spanish in class.
Right. Which is fucked up because we could curse on this podcast, Marco, if you're so inclined. But because
I mean, I would have been bleeped like a long.
I don't have that button set up, you're good. But MJ, the thing about it is the reason why I don't speak Spanish is rooted from my dad's 1950s upbringing with his elementary school. First thing they try to do, he's in kindergarten. My name is Samuel Gonzalez with the accent on the A and an E-Z. They go, no, you spell it E-S. He goes, he's like 5 years old. What? No, it's E-S. It's like, no, it's E-Z. He had to fight the teacher for that. Okay. Cut a little bit there. He keeps speaking Spanish. I think he's halfway bilingual, maybe 4th or 5th grade, but in 5th grade, apparently his English wasn't good enough. So they put him in special ed. Not like English to learn, or ESL as we have it now, special ed. And my dad's a smart dude. He put 4 kids through college on, without a college degree. He figured it out. But they essentially beat it out of him, punished him until it was no longer his language. And he actually just told me this and reiterated this again. He still thinks in Spanish, but he speaks English. So he has to convert Spanish when his thoughts are in Spanish, but his words are in English. And he can kind of speak Spanish, but he's almost entirely lost it. So for you saying that, 95? I guess 96?
91, so like maybe like 97.
Right.
Yeah,
that happened to you, Alyssa, as well? Like, oh yeah, I mean, Harlingen.
Oh,
yeah,
well,
like they didn't beat it out of you, I don't think,
anything
but
like that. Like,
natural.
so my mom definitely went through that, like in Eagle Pass, which is strange because it's like right on the border.
Right.
She went through that, but I never really went through that in school, like where they would like punish me like for speaking Spanish. Like, when I moved to Harlingen, I learned that my teacher was the only one who could speak Spanish. So like she would, sometimes talk to me in Spanish and things like that. But it was like my classmates and like who I that looked, Latino. So, I'd be like, oh, like a raspa, things like that,
Yeah.
small little words. And they'd be like, what are you saying?
Right.
Another thing, a fun, I don't know, I learned this and it's pretty funny. So in Eagle Pass, we call raspas yukis. And when I moved to the Valley, everyone's like, what the fuck is a yuki? Like, what are you saying?
Right.
Do you know what a snow cone? I mean, you know what a snow cone is.
I know what a
right?
snow cone. I know what a spado is. That's what we call them. We call them snow cones because
I've never heard them call it the whole thing until it like came back to Austin. It was like raspado.
Yeah.
I had never heard that in my entire life.
raspas or something if you want to get real.
Yeah,
kind of
that's what I had heard.
Yeah,
and yukis.
Yuki's
Yuki.
never heard.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
you scrape the ice. Raspa.
Yeah, literally. That's what the word is.
Right. So point is, I want one now, and it's 12 o'clock at night, and I can't get one. But so
You could get them in the valley.
there's a guy always on the corner, which is ready to go to block of ice.
It's
Just
everywhere, man. There's little things that you don't miss. That when you go up north, you kind of like you're like, fuck, bro. Like you can't get a striped taco if you go up north. Like you think it's like dumb, but no, bro. Like getting a potato and egg taco in the morning is like $1.
no. I mean, what I miss. This is hilarious to throw back to how I was raised. So it's kind of weird. The first 10 years of my life, I grew up in maybe not the best part of town of Fresno, California. And then the last 7 through high school, I lived in a very nice part, newly developed part of Fresno. But those first 10 years, we had the tamale lady, or tamale lady, if you want to be proper about it, 6 in the morning. Like she was screaming like an insane person, not declaring it, not like tamales, tamales. It was like tamale. Like she was like scary, and she'd wake us up at the crack of dawn. She was like our rooster, just waking up us at the crack of dawn, and we would just be terrified because her voice would just like scream through all the cracks and crevices of the doors into your ear. And you can't get that anywhere. I don't get that even in I can find maybe a lady with a stroller in a Walmart around here, maybe, but that's about as best I can get for tamales.
So that's a very particular thing of Mexico City. There's this dude that I forget what his name. Sonidos que dan hambre. That's his Facebook thing.
Uh-huh.
But the dude goes to all these vendors that sell street food in Mexico, and how they do their calls like to. There's this one particular trans person that like everybody knows because like they dress very feminine,
right.
and like whenever they speak they sound very manly, and like he does it intentionally, like that's his like the thing that pulls people or whatever,
Right.
So like you'll see him like real dragged out, real awesome, right? You'll hear him like tamales or no tacos de canasta. That's what he says. And I think it's really cool, dude, because I'm like, dude, like he's trans, and I think it's beautiful that he's using like his gift, right? Like not all of us are gifted with the ability of being like two people, right?
Right.
But I think it's cool that like he kind of brings it to the spotlight, and it's not like an awkward or weird thing. Like everybody knows him. Oh, that's the guy that sells the tacos de vapor, right?
Right. And man, I mean, we're going about street vendors, man. The shootings, no, the violence, man, towards street vendors lately. Fresno had a real bad one in broad daylight. Somebody shot and ran up on one of the dudes. I want to say 3 weeks ago. And
you ever seen those cholos that like they get together and they like call their friends?
Yeah,
they go support the
they'll protect them. They'll have guys on call.
Well, they'll also get them to go buy stuff. Like call up to all their friends and go buy all their stuff. Like,
oh yeah.
Oh yeah. They have boycott. Basically, it's a boycott. They just show up and it's like, hey man, like you've put in the work all year, like, and they buy everything in his cart so you can go home early.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's just a beautiful thing that it's coming out from like this background of like cholos, where they always look at people that are in the group or whatever as like negative people.
Right.
Drug addicts, whatever, gangbangers or whatever. But it's like when they start doing all this community work, man, like I love this whole idea of community that they make and they create.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up as a lowrider when I was younger. Ironically, the lowrider stuff kind of came from California, but it's weird because Texas is kind of like Southern California.
Right.
Very similar. Like, I don't know how they kind of interlocked. Maybe it's like they were same thoughts, same people. I don't know. It's
populations of young American Latinos that don't have an identity in Mexico, but so they have to create their own. That's so
they want the identity from here,
right? But so the thing is, so you make your own, you carve your own little spot out because, as you put, Marcos, in our Facebook post, you got to be more Mexican than the Mexicans. You got to be more American than the Americans. It's exhausting. Edward James Olmos, Selena. But
that's the idea. Selena quote, man. But it's true. Like, yeah. But I think that whole culture is beautiful in the sense that it's like. That by itself is an identity, you know?
Yeah.
Like, we were taking up all these old cars and recycling them and making them beautiful, lowriders because we know how to fix them. We know how to, like, pull them apart. And we could do these beautiful works of art. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, with the Aztecs, like, they always think, oh, these Aztecs were conquerors, blah, blah, blah. But they never talk about the art that the Aztecs did, their plumage, whenever they would design their shields and stuff.
Right. They mapped the stars, for Christ's sakes. They invented irrigation. Like, Aztecs did a lot because they had a bunch of, like, imagine being so bored. You're just like, I think I saw that star before. Huh.
Surgeries. They were the first to, like, work with surgical tools with obsidian.
Right.
Obsidian is one of those things, too, where it was like, I had not even like, well, this goes back to a lot. Why one of the things I want to talk about in this podcast, like even things like cocoa. I never had an ofrenda. I never did Dia de los Muertos my entire life. I don't know if anybody else here did.
Not really.
Okay, okay, Marco did.
I didn't do the ofrendas, and it wasn't up until I got older that I started doing them. And like at our job, like we do like a cultural, a community of ofrenda, where like we invite people from the community to bring pictures of their past, their fallen past people or whatever, and they bring pictures of them, and we put them on an altar. I usually sponsor all the skeleton stuff. I have like a bunch of stuff.
That's awesome, dude.
You can't see them. I don't want to like dip the thing either, but
Right.
But just to sidetrack 1 second and then go back to where we're at now, that I had not heard of obsidian blades my entire life until I saw Deadliest Warrior like 4 years ago, and I was like, "Whoa, Aztecs made that shit, and it's sharper than steel."
Right. And you could chop off a horse's head with a club. What? Right. That's what we took away from that.
It's beautiful, man. Like they're fragile. I'll admit.
Yeah. Well, the obsidian.
But so are samurai swords, and everyone loves them.
You're right. Yeah. No. They're like, yeah. People talk about samurai swords. They had to fold it 100 times. It's, yeah, because the metal was shitty as hell. It would snap in half if you didn't fold it that many times. It was awful. But that's the other thing that I like. When you talk about like lowriders and things like that, what people forget, and I didn't even realize until very recently, that's just engineering that you figured out yourself. Like to lift a vehicle and the hydraulics, I wouldn't be able to figure that out.
They used to use the airbags from the Cadillacs. Like Cadillacs.
Right.
Yeah, they used to come with these like stock airbags of like the old 1920s, because that's what gave them a real soft ride.
Right.
And a lot of what lowrider people would do is they would pull those out and put them in other cars so you can drop them and lower them and stuff like that. And
I realized, how come Transformers haven't made lowriders? I would buy
because it would talk in a racist voice the way the black Transformers did.
That is true. That's another podcast for this one.
They did it in
Latino. Cars they did. But I'm talking. I mean, not just the. What are they called?
A cameo?
No, not a cameo. What's the word where something is human when they're really not? There's a actual term for it.
I know what you mean.
You know what I'm talking about. Point is,
yeah, but I don't know the word either.
I don't know the word either. It escapes me. But no, I'm talking about like a transformer where like, yeah, it's a lowrider and then it doesn't speak and it's, hey guys, what's up? Roll out.
In general, that is going to be another topic that this podcast is going to cover in general, which is media representation. Which this is a meet the cast. This is a we're going to touch everything lightly. I'm actually getting ideas for more episodes over this podcast, but media representation is definitely a big weird one that me and you butt heads about a little bit
all the time. And I feel like this is like a teaser. This is like a pilot where you were just throwing out different ideas here and there. But did you have anything else on your docket that you wanted to go over specifically when it comes to identification? Do we figure out what we call ourselves and what the definitions are?
Anthropomorphic is the word you were looking for.
I saw it, yeah. Because people are furious about Latinx. Older people, I would say. Young people love it.
It's not even that much older. I would say people our age are mad about it. Like it's us and up. And I don't completely. I had to have it explained to me because I didn't know what Latinx was. I thought it was like a big cultural movement. And then somebody point blank told me like, no, Latinx is literally a phrase for trans people because they don't identify as Latino or Latina. It's Latinx.
So this is kind of, and I want to kind of put the timeline of how I saw it, because this is something I've been focusing on for a long time in terms of the media. We grew up, Mexican American was one of the terms for just everybody. Mexican American, or I'm Mexican, and then you had terms like Chicano, Hispanic, Latino, Latina. And then when I was in college, this is roughly starting in 08 to 12, they had the at symbol. So it was Chicano or Chicanat was the joke, but it was Chicana, Chicano. And so that kind of was like, okay, for both people, it's inclusive. And then I left college and I go, cool, figured that out, bye. And then the new batch of kids came up and they said, well, that doesn't include everybody because Spanish is a gendered language. We need to include people that fall outside of that binary. So then that's where Latinx came in, or even Chicanx, I don't know how to pronounce it, but Latinx then rose to as the phrase for, like you said, people who don't identify within the binary. So from there, the old people, and I say old people in the sense of people in their probably 50s, 40s right now, people that grew up in that Chicano era of the 90s, from my perspective from California.
Tell them what they are, man.
Well, the thing is that we're so old now. 40s and 50s isn't boomers. They're Gen X.
Yeah, they're Gen X. My sister's Gen X. My sister's Gen X. She's one of the most progressive people in the world. And she's trying to get it, but her brain just can't process it. She's just like, it doesn't make sense. For whatever reason, it's hard for her to, even though she wants to get it, she can't get it. And that's one way to go about it, where you just go, okay, let them do what they got to do and leave it alone and identify yourself whatever you want. But there's people actively raging against it. One, the Chicano movement people are saying that it erases their movement and that it eliminates the history of it, which is a valid concern, but I don't think that it's indicative of that. It's not meant for erasure, even though some people might take it there. And two, the other portion is that Latinx is extremely unpopular for people above like the age of 30. There's like polls that people have done, and if you're over 30, you pretty much don't use it. So, Mike, and then that being said, all the terms that we do use, Latino, Latina, Chicano, blah blah blah, how do we pick? And what do people call us, and what is right, I guess, because things are changing so often. We got to figure it out.
Marco has a lot to say about this. Let's just let him.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
It's weird that like we all went in the circle kind of talking about identity, right? I mean, except me. But I was gonna mention, like, I remember struggling with the identity thing, because like identity, like what does that mean to anyone, right? Like where are we from, right?
Right.
Where do we put our roots, or what do we claim, right? What I ended up trying to understand, because I remember they asked me that question they were asking us that question in college. I had in Latinos in the U.S. class. And the professor was like, what do you guys identify with? Like, what do you call yourselves, right?
Right.
Or where do you rep, right? And I remember thinking, like, what the hell does that mean, right? Because, like, I was born in Monterrey. I was raised in FAR. I'm in college Station.
Mm-hmm.
I moved to Austin. Like, what the fuck does that mean? So I remember, just because I've been, like, trying to, like, have, like, a more, not universal. Yeah, I guess a universal. You can argue, like, worldview. I like having a worldview. So whenever they had asked me, like, "Hey, man, where are you from?" or whatever, I remember saying that I'm a citizen of the world, right? And they're like, everybody laughed. They blew out laughter.
Yeah.
But like my prof, like, kind of was like, what do you mean by that? And I was like, dude, because I don't believe in borders or nations, right? Like, I don't want to acknowledge those type of things. Those are man-made. So I believe wherever my feet are, that's where I'm from, right?
Mm-hmm. That's
identified to anything.
So that you came to the same conclusion that I kind of did as I went to Anchorage, Lubbock, all these other places, and it's of all the places that enumerated it, it was Bruce Lee. He's like, they asked Bruce Lee in the 70s, it's like, do you want to see yourself as Chinese or American? He's like, what I would really love to see myself is as a citizen of the world, just free to travel and free to learn from everybody.
Yeah.
But that in general is also harkens back to why we're doing this podcast, because we want to see ourselves as that, but we also still want to help. Like, we are still part of this culture that likes barbacoa tacos, that wants to help the people, that dances to chente. Like, it's like, and I think that of all things that have ever existed, what's the name of the movie? Get Out does it for black people. It's like, you have to wear this mask when you're around black people, this mask when you're around white people, and Mexicans have to do that. Mexican Americans have to do that all the fucking time. It's
right.
like, oh, get on the, like, one mask.
All right.
Walk into the store, it's like, put on a different mask. It's like, oh, hello, I'm just checking out.
So then, I want to. I'm playing the worst devil's advocate here, because I've had this finger pointed at me so often for not speaking Spanish, for not being this, that, and the other. so there's a huge thing when it comes to the criticism of being a citizen of the world or Latinx or something that is unfamiliar to the definitions that have been given, which is, at what point are you giving up your like you said, your roots? So what point are you giving up your background, your identity? Because a lot of people link language, link food, link music to themselves and to where they are and to what they're about and their pride in what they are. So for people, when I don't speak Spanish, when I don't know, it's active that I don't know, and where I would like to learn but haven't had the time nor someone to practice with, excuses aside, they hate me. They hate people that I don't know, speak to me like I'm a monster and that I don't deserve to have this website, which I invented just to fight that kind of concept, which is what is enough and what is Chicano, what is being enough of one and what is being one just in general. So when you want to be citizens of the world, which is the goal for we would say, in a kind of a ideal world, what do you tell those people that hold on to those things so tightly?
One, I want to argue that I hate that people are calling you out for not speaking Spanish because it's very, like, you can't fucking, like, white supremacy oppresses us all, right? And the fact that we were assimilated into not speaking Spanish has nothing to do with you speaking Spanish. Like, your parents were, like, beat probably to not fucking speak Spanish.
Right.
And, like, whenever people try arguing that kind of point, it's just kind of like, dude, like, okay, great that you don't speak Spanish, but do you eat tacos? Like, do you eat tortillas? Like, the fucking language is not the only fucking identity that fucking represents us as Mexicans.
Right.
Like, when I try to identify, like, for example, in the census, I like putting mestizo. It's not my fault that my indigenous side was erased. It was destroyed by the conquest, right? By the
I'm 6'4". I'm 6'4" for a reason, and my tío Juan, who's from Oaxaca, is 5'2" for a reason. Because he's more indigenous,
that
right?
doesn't necessarily mean that you weren't like you don't have an indigenous side, man. All we know is the Spanish,
right?
You know?
Yeah, and like to piggyback off like what Marco's saying, like going back to like what roots are, like those are our roots. Like, the indigenous people of Mexico did not speak Spanish until the Spaniards came and took over.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Unless we're speaking fucking Nahuatl and shit like that, and like which they have like a couple people I know that like teach it still. Where like I knew in college, there's people that are still trying to get it out. Right.
They're trying to like reclaim it. One thing that I do have hope about our generation is that we're trying to go back and dig into those roots. There's a lot of folk art that's been popping up that's very indigenous inspired. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of like, I've noticed that there's a lot of people that are starting to get into like printing and stuff like that. Like, I think that there's gonna be there's like a renaissance right now to try to regain our Mexican culture because it was erased. And I think it's really badass that like whenever I hear like people singing like reggaeton songs or whenever like Jeremy was into our music, like we sing in Spanish. And I remember one of the interviews that he had done about like the top 10 ska bands or whatever, he had brought up something like, sometimes I don't know what they're saying, but he's like, that it's like that you can feel it, and I was just kind of like, fucking hey, man, like, we go in there and I want people to have a sense of pride of our culture, and we sing in Spanish because I feel like we've been shamed to speak Spanish. So it's kind of like telling the fucking world, like, you, like, because we get to fucking like express our language that was taken away from us, and we're kind of like reclaiming it when we sing our songs, right? And then when we hear the crowd singing them, it's even like better.
Also, you were talking about our kind of indigenous artwork and stuff being brought up. This is an artist from Austin, a guy, I forget his name, he's on my Instagram, I gotta find him, but talking about kind of bringing that idea to kind of our modern age. If you want to take a look at this piece of artwork for the audio listeners, it's Super Smash Brothers done in like Mayan ruin artwork. So you have like the whole cast there, and it's done in that style where you can kind of
Aztec. I actually follow that artist.
Yeah,
he fucking does really great work.
No, he does, and I saw this one as like Super Smash Brothers, which is what I grew up with as a kid. I didn't grow up with playing like the Aztec ball game, through the hoop. I didn't grow up playing that. I grew up playing Smash Brothers. So to have it reflected in a way that is indicative of one of my many histories, of my genetics and my love and my
it
blood.
looks like Marco's going to show his own art right now.
Oh, I got a whole thing. Yeah.
Ironically, aside from the music stuff that I do, and we're talking about the space Aztecs, right? Look at that.
Oh wow!
Dang,
Shit.
that's dope. I like that a lot.
I have this vision, and I felt like whenever I painted that one, I was thinking of like,
Wait, you painted that?
yeah, that's my own stuff.
That's brilliant, man.
I was thinking like, what would freaking astronauts be like if we did it? Like if we were in space and we did our own costumes and stuff. I was like, would we make them white? Probably not.
Nah.
A lot of our stuff's very colorful and beautiful. So I was thinking like, man, I'm gonna make his like spacesuit like pink. Like it looks fucking better.
Nah, we got to talk. I have this. To have Afrofuturism. I don't know how to call it right now. The tentative phrase is Chicano futurism. I have an idea where you take those elements of like Mexicans in space we joked about, the engineering elements of, oh, what if they made lowriders and then they're like, oh, we can make mechs like Gundams. But based off of that, where it's like, okay, let's make it upright, and then they just make fucking futuristic robots. Like we have the ability, and the thing is that another thing, as myself, third generation, relatively, that is what my niece is gonna do. My niece is on track to be in NASA because she's super smart. My sister graduated from UCLA, USC, and is able to give her the advantages that other people had before us. So my niece has every advantage. She's smart as a tack. My other niece smart as a tack. My nephew smart as a tack. And all of them are gonna do all sorts of kind of things. So I go, what if in 50 years, 100 years, when their grandkids who've been given every opportunity, don't have to climb the hurdles that we had to climb, what are they gonna do with those opportunities? Shit. I made this, and I didn't have production equipment ever in my life until I got it later and later. And there's people that have taken off because they've had access, but like at the times where I just started doing it when I was 16, 17. The oldest YouTubers who had access to cameras are now veterans making millions of dollars. If I would have been able to start with the technology, I probably would have been there too. But it wasn't until now that I got it together,
check
right?
This out, man. Like with this is how awesome it is as us as Mexicans that we are. We're very fucking resourceful. Like,
right.
You don't have fucking studio quality shit, but it looks like studio quality.
Well, now I do. I work for it.
Yeah, but like I'm thinking of like, you ever seen that movie Spare Parts?
No.
With George Lopez, like where they.
Oh yeah, I have. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I have.
Like,
I saw
they made all those things out of junk.
Right.
Like, and it's kind of an interesting thing that like a lot of people at work like me because I'm very like I'll engineer shit. Like I'll MacGyver shit just to make things work.
Right.
And I think that's a very awesome thing that I think we bring to the table a lot of the times because not a lot of people can do that. Mm-hmm. Like we can make, for example, masa, right? There's a million ways that we use masa.
Right.
Tortilla,
tamales,
right.
Sopes, huaraches, atole.
Right.
Dude, everything has masa in it, but like, we're it's still like seen as like garbage, right? Like they don't see it as value or whatever. But like, I think it's coming back, and I think it soon. We'll see.
Well, menudo.
We're the sleeping giant, man.
Right. And you talk about and kind of going back to what you were talking about at the border, where people they see that the people are there and are the evil capitalist way would be like they're so exploitable. They're ready to be exploited. But people want to reach us and they don't know how, because quite frankly, we don't know how to reach ourselves. When it comes to movies, they want to make Latino content, Chicano content, but they'll get 1 or 2 seasons and that's it.
I mean, the Coco guy was pretty close.
In terms of
he was from San Antonio.
Well, no, I mean, no, we get some. We have our pieces, and
Robert
we're getting
Rodriguez
them.
has been making shit for forever,
Right.
and then he also famously did what you were talking about, like, because what was his first movie? It wasn't Desperado with Antonio, but it was that El Mariachi.
El Mariachi.
Yeah, he like jerry rigged so much of that movie so that it would look good.
No, he edited on camera.
Budget. Yeah,
it was like an $8,000 budget, and he was like, "All right, I only have one chance to do this." So he just jump up on thing, fling himself down with the action, and he's like, "That's the take. Let's keep it going.
Make it work."
Make it work."
So a lot of what this is basically because we're all over the place, is like, when you pick up a book and you read the back and the summary is kind of all over the place, it's like, oh, where is this journey going to go? That's what this podcast is. It's the summary of everything I hope this podcast to cover in the future. So I just want to give like a little bit of light, and I'm going to pass the ball to Alyssa about the future for us, because we are living at this very weird time where there's a big portion of Mexican Americans that are the new conservatives. I mean, based on what's happened in Miami and Cubans and stuff, like, it's just a very easy metric that the GOP is trying to reach out for. And as I don't know if you've seen it, Marco, in the Valley, but we definitely saw it here in Eagle Pass, where it's like, yeah, man, I'm voting for Trump. I don't care what he did. I don't care what he said. He doesn't support unemployment, and I just care that he wants people to work.
Yeah,
it sucks. Because I don't know why we identify with white people.
Like, I can get there.
I get it.
When the ball gets to me, I got to figure it out because my dad told me all about it. Because he saw it happen in real time. But Alyssa, what do you think? Where do you think this is all heading?
So one thing that I think that, we need to address is just like the anti-Blackness that's in the Latino community. Like, not only towards African Americans, people who are Black, but also like within, there are Afro Latinos,
Dominicans who are Black, and Puerto Ricans who are Black. That they're that's a joke with Dominicans. I'm not Black, I'm Dominican. That's a joke that has been made famous on the internet. I'm not Black, I'm Dominican. That's obviously making a joke about it.
You know what? But what's kind of crazy about thinking about that kind of stuff though. Like, we can't like stop hating other people when we can't stop hating ourselves,
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Like, one thing that I noticed growing up in Eagle Pass, like, where we're 98% Mexican.
Hispanic.
Yeah. Hispanic. We didn't grow up around a lot of white people. We didn't grow up around a lot of Black people. We didn't grow up around a lot of Indian people. It was only our culture that we were exposed to. And within it, you see the classism, like the colorism.
Oh, yeah.
And you just peel back those layers, and it's like, you see it a lot. Well, I saw it a lot in those who lived in Mexico and went to school in Eagle Pass. I don't want to use this term, but like the fresas.
No. The thing is, in order for us to break it down, we have to use terms familiar that people know. So let's use those terms and address them.
Like, I don't know if you guys have heard, like, your parents, when they speak in Spanish, like, they'll say things like, "Ay, me siento bien India."
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right.
And they don't see it as racist. They're like, "Oh, that's just a saying." I was like, "No, dude. Like there's people that I've called out, and I'm kind of like, no, dude. Like, we shouldn't say those things."
Right.
I mean,
perpetuating it.
It even comes to a point where, like, we grew up in a 98% Hispanic place, but still the darkest Hispanic is Negro. JJ, I mean, would be Chino. Like, Chino, what's going on? Like, it's like, that's not actually cool.
Right. And people will say,
I like hearing the stories of legends. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard the legend of Facundo.
Yep, I've heard that one. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'll make it brief. Like, there's a beautiful story of, like, this guy named Facundo.
Mm-hmm.
So back then, like, white people were always trying to convert our Mexican names to English names. So for, like, Juan, they would call him John. Mary, they would call her, or Maria, they would call her Mary. But then they got to this kid named Facundo, and they couldn't fucking translate his name because they didn't know how to translate it. So, like, he became a legend in Mexican folklore of this kid that you couldn't change his name, and he got to keep his beautiful Mexican name.
Right, because they're like, what do we do? What do we do? We'll call him fuck. He goes, no, that sounds too much like a swear. So they couldn't come up with a way to anglicize Facundo, so he kept it. And go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, if I could just, so with that, growing up in Eagle Pass, not being exposed to that, like, a lot of it is, you see it, like, you see the self-hate, like, with, Latinos voting for Trump. And another thing that I've noticed recently is that a lot of the Latinos try to lump their experience in with the African American experience. And it's like, that's not the case whatsoever. You know, we were talking earlier about our identity and how we're able to trace our ancestries back to, you know, Aztecs and things like that.
Loosely, at least, right?
Yes, loosely. You know, Black people here in America don't have that luxury. They don't know where they came from. Their experience is completely different from ours. And I think that we need to, you know, focus on the colorism that is within our culture and like take a hard look at ourselves and be like, it's not black and white, you know, just because Latinos get away with specific things, you know, whether because of the color of their skin, there are, you know, white passing Latinos and things like that.
All of us.
All of us
Here, yeah, in this podcast.
Yeah, all of us here, for example, you know, we don't have those same things. And like, we need to not see it so black and white as like an us versus them mentality, you know. We are all going through our struggles, and I just think that we definitely need to take a hard look at ourselves and be like, what can we do to undo like this colorism within our own community before we can go out and spew it into the world, you know?
Right.
We're getting very bland, man. Like, I think we're very colorful culture, spices, art, and it's just weird. Like Subcomandante Marcos used to call us the people of the corn, because they say that there's this particular rainbow corn that's like all the colors.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And
Dude, you're the first person that I've ever met that's read that from anything from some comment on Marcos. But I mean, maybe it's because it's your name is on it. That's you were just like, I have to see what this dude is saying.
Right.
I'm joking.
No, dude.
But
so Zapata's been a hero of mine for years. Thus the mustache, right? Like,
right.
what you were saying, everyone got to go around. I actually didn't get to say my background for the most part, because I just knew culture as a kid, because it was basically Tejano culture, playing Ramon Ayala, going to carne asadas. Like, it was what it was, because it was 98% Hispanic. And it wasn't until I left to go to Lubbock that it was like, oh, there was something there that was completely different and completely like what it is. And then, like, of all times in my the time where I learned that I am Mexican American, I am Mexican, I am different, was in sixth grade. I had to write a paper, and then all my teacher said was pick a Mexican icon. I grew up knowing everything about Texas history, loving history, and I was like, Santa Ana, and it was like, you can't get Santa Ana because two students in front of you already got it. Here's Emiliano Zapata.
Oh, that's the start of this whole thing.
Yes. And so I didn't know anything about Emiliano Zapata. I was 11. And I go home and I'm like, oh, I'm so pissed off, Dad. They didn't let me write about Santa Ana. They made me write about stupid Emiliano Zapata. And my dad was like,
right.
wrong with you?
And he was like, let me sit down and tell you the story. And like, he actually pours himself a shot. And then he's like, do you like living in this country? And I was like, sure, I guess. I mean, I got to watch Power Rangers. I get it. Like,
right.
Life is great. Yeah. And he's like, I just want you to know this country has done a lot of terrible things for it to be as good as it is for you today. And that, then he goes into the story about who Emiliano Zapata was, how Pancho Villa was probably the only person for a good 50 years that was daring enough to attack the United States into New Mexico.
Was he the only successful person to take money from take gold from Fort Knox? Was it Zapata or was it Pancho Villa?
It was Pancho Villa, because Emiliano Zapata's in the South. That's where his army was.
Yeah.
But so you just go on and you learn all this thing about like for the people. So Emiliano Zapata wrote a manifesto, and he was poorly educated, so the manifesto was poorly written. So all the journalists printed it because they were thinking like everyone's going to laugh at this stupid motherfucker, but they got the idea behind it that it was like those that work the land should own the land,
right?
And it was like that's what started the movement, and then that's overall the birth of the politics of what made me who I am today.
Right.
You know what's crazy? Like how I don't know if you know that I love Zapata like a lot. Mm-hmm. Like the reason that he started like doing that, like started the whole thing was it all started when he was 9 years old. the federal government came and took away his dad's land, and they told, like, when the person, whoever bought him, some capitalist bought it, they told the dad, hey, you can stay there as long as you work the lands. So they took their lands and made his dad work the lands, but he couldn't own the lands that were his already.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Emiliano Zapata made it like that thing stayed scarred with him since he was like 9 years old, and he would like bully the military officers. Like, he would mess with them, like mess up their guns. Like, he would sabotage their shit all the time.
Right.
And then he ends up like there's a beautiful saying that he runs up to these kids in a river or in a lake that they're splashing each other, and he asks them like, "Hey, you guys should join the revolution." He's like, "A mí me gustan los peleoneros, like the ones that are fucking around."
Right.
And they were kind of like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, come join the revolution. Like, we're signing you up right now." It's a beautiful history. There's a beautiful history about Texas and revolutionaries here in Texas called Los Sediciosos. That a lot of people don't know about. Lucy Parsons was from Waco.
I just learned about her today.
Yeah, her and Albert Parsons were some of the Chicago organizers that died in the Haymarket Massacre.
Right.
And they hung Albert Parson, her husband, and she dedicated her whole life to fight capitalism because of them hanging her husband.
Right.
But she was from Texas. Emma Tenayuca, also from San Antonio. She was
the pecan shellers.
the pecan shellers. Antonio Rendain was from here in. Actually, he was from Rio Grande City. He was the one that was organizing here the United Farm Workers in the melon strike.
Yep. I mean, I'm kind of cheating. The Central Valley, San Joaquin Valley, Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, the Filipino
Cesar
leaders.
Chavez, yeah,
that's sweet. Yeah. The grape strike, general strike, all that stuff. Yeah.
Lettuce strike. Well, so Lupe extends from that. La Unión del Pueblo Entero is the organization that Cesar Chavez created after the UFW, because he saw that people were winning better conditions in the fields, but they weren't winning better conditions in infrastructure in their neighborhood.
Right.
So that's what we do now. Like, we organize a community to kind of like help them better their neighborhoods.
Right. And so, Marco, where do you think we go from here with all that? Like,
I'll tell you what I tell. I'll tell you guys, right? Like, I'll tell you guys what I tell all the community every time I'm organizing. Like, if we were really organized, I don't know where the hell we'd be next week. But since we're all disorganized, like,
ain't that the goddamn truth? No. So my father was a union organizer, so I know a lot about organizing, and I see how disbanded we are as a unit.
Yeah.
And it's just that hurts. It's funny, but it hurts.
It's a shame, but it's true. But damn, man, I swear to God, if we work together, like, who the hell knows? Come on, we build everything. We pick all the food. Like, we're in everything. We're every state. We're like the majority. We're very we don't represent ourselves because we don't want to blast ourselves that we're there, right? Mm-hmm. But we're there. Like, you go any white neighborhood, you're gonna see a Mexican. Like, we're there.
Right.
We're just like underground. We don't want to, like, we don't show off.
I've always had an idea for a post-apocalypse film, just like an element of it, where everyone, society goes to hell, and everyone's fighting over crops and land, or not even crops, just like resources and whatnot. I always had this vision of like, oh yeah, what if Latinos just kept working the fields and kept the fruit, and always had resources? Like, the people who own it wouldn't know how to work the land. So they'd be in their high castles, and they get looted in the zombie apocalypse. But with all those crops there and all the processes, who knows how to use it? Immigrants of every type.
Did you ever see the movie A Day Without a Mexican?
It's been a long time, yeah.
Yeah, that movie was fucking rowdy. Like, it's awesome. Everything went to shit.
Right.
It's like, everything went to shit. Nobody cut their yards. Nobody ate.
Right.
Not to rain on everyone's parade, but I just have to play devil's advocate a little bit, just because I've been involved with 2 or 3 things that it's like, let's get organized. This is time to do something. And it could be as small as getting a councilman elected and as big as trying to get Bethel over the fucking Ted Cruz. But it's, why do we end up always being crabs in a bucket? Like when it comes to specifically Mexican Americans.
That was
as far as Lupe goes, I feel like they go that way all the time, right? And I feel like a lot of the times, like whenever whenever you work in those in nonprofit sectors, it feels like sometimes you're limited. But I've also liked that I've learned to organize outside of it. Like, yes, they play an important part. Like Lupe is very important for this community. Like they do a lot of great work. But we also need a lot of other support. Like it just like they shouldn't be the only organization trying to fight change and challenge things. We were organizing here with the IWW for a long time. We started our own chapter, and we're organizing over labor rights. Mm-hmm. We do. I'm a firm believer in direct action. Like, not a fan of the ballot box. Like you can't. I don't believe you can change things through the ballot box. I think you could get things done. If you protest, you put some elbow grease into things. The direct action gets the goods, man.
Right. And that kind of goes to where we're headed, which is not good. Because the idea is, for me, what I see is, so you talked about why there's the Trump supporters and kind of the differences between people. And so first of all, as I always point to this, is that like, and this is going to be controversial perhaps, but Mexicans inherently are from two different warrior tribes. You have the most vicious Spanish conquistadors spreading disease and murder and steel across the whole country just to convert people. Then you had Aztecs who were cutting out the hearts of people in the other part. They were in the wrong part of the jungle. So it's like, all right, that guy looks like he's slightly different than me. I'm going to rip his heart out, kick him down the stairs. So we have all this conflict in us, I feel, that just from what we're born of, which is just, it wasn't natural. Like other people were just came to be other cultures, and yeah, there's war and things like that, but this was there's a moment when we were invented. The Spanish came, tried to take everything, and then it almost worked out. We fought back, we mostly died, the Aztecs mostly died, and then everything just mixed, to be gentle, mixed, and here we are. And so with that mestizo kind of understanding of what we know, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, this may be a different conclusion, but it's just, and it is something that I feel like sometimes is true, and it's very tragic if it is true. Are we just kind of like Africa in a way, in the sense that Africa is this country that colonialism divided them onto lines they didn't believe? So they just now that it's overall, well, not all of it. I'm speaking in very broad terms, but it's a place where they just follow world leaders, like in Sudan and stuff like that.
No,
is that why? Because honestly, like when it comes to at least some people that were following Trump, it's like that dude's an asshole. He says his mind and he's going to change things. See,
mine comes from a different area, which is
okay.
It's because we were created through violence and very recently, several hundred years. We're not that old of a type of people. Mm-mm. We don't really belong anywhere because we're like remnants of Spain. But we have the lands and the architecture of the Aztecs and the Mayans, but we have the language of the oppressor, if you would, an Latin language, the same as English and all that stuff. So what do we do with that combination that was forced upon us? And depending on what side you consider is yourself. So I consider like kind of my baseline more of along the Aztec lines of my identity, because I'm 6'4", I'm lighter than all hell. My sisters have anemia, which is a Spanish blood disease. But ultimately, there's more familiar to me of Mexican culture and Aztec culture than Spanish culture. So you already have that dichotomy where some people want to identify as the more anglicized version of themselves, where you get the people, the light skins are the better. I don't want to look like a indio, the güeros versus the negros. And you get that, and it's ingrained in us. Yeah, morenos, all that stuff, morenas. It's ingrained in us for so long. Then you get to people, and I like to call it Arizona because fuck them generally, because they're the ones that vote Republican, and they say we don't want those goddamn beaners to come on our side of the border. But it's like, they'll say we came here legally. It's like, bro, your great-grandparents set up camp a few miles north of this arbitrary line. That doesn't make you any better. And your last name ends in EZ, and they're going to pick on you just the same as those guys. Like you had said earlier about the DPS messing with you versus messing with, and not even wanting to mess with people that what their job is supposed to be, which is not a good job anyway. So people, I think, do the things that they think will keep them out of trouble. And so a lot of that for a long time was identifying as white. And up until was it the 70s, Hispanic, Mexican were considered white on the census until they split us off. But there's some people I think that still idealize that the anglicized version of themselves, which then bleeds into the anti-blackness, the homophobia, the transphobia, all the phobias, because if you deviate from the norm, you could put yourself at risk. And so I think it came probably, I wonder, musing, if it could be out of protection for themselves during the very violent eras of United States history. But at this point, we have to break those things or else we're just going to die. We're going to die by them. Because if someone votes for Trump, say as a Mexican or Latino, and they say, oh man, I'm glad that the illegals are going to have their papers checked. Well, guess what? They're going to check your papers too. And if you don't have your ID on you, it don't matter how good your English is, doesn't matter how light your skin is. If you look even kind of Mexican, they're going to push you in the cage just the same. They put it, a 17-year-old kid about 3 years ago, they did the same thing. And they think they're exempt and they're not. And I think that's where it comes from. And then the other ethnicities have different versions of that, like Cubans, not to call them out specifically, but Cubans are very conservative.
Well, shit, when they fucking let you and they pay for your fucking status.
Right. Right. That was the thing. So for those of you who don't know, real quick, Cubans have essentially refugee status. So they swim across the 60 miles of boat. They touch down. They hit their hand on Florida like the goddamn end zone, and they're citizens.
I don't know if you know any stories about this, like, because Fresno, I don't think is that close to the border, but
yeah,
there's people that run across the bridge and then they just touch it and they're like, no, soy cubana. Like, you have to let me in.
Right. And we don't have that. We have Tijuana, which is just as fun.
They're literally crossing a damn ocean. We're crossing a fucking river.
Yeah.
But they get that status. They get that protected status where they get the citizenship.
Status. We don't get shit.
Right. And so
we feed everyone.
Right. And then that's what happens where and you see that, Marco? It's in your voice because you understand it, but
I'm already getting
no. But here's the thing. Here's the fucked up thing. Fucking Cubans and Carlos is in the chat. Fucking Puerto Ricans. No, fuck with them. But no. But here's the problem. They're on our team. And they're nothing like us. No, they're nothing like us. But from the outside? From the outside. You're telling me that a white guy knows the difference between a Cuban and a Mexican?
So this is going to be another episode that we're going to have in the future. But one of my big role models outside of everything that we talked about was Che Guevara. And then in the Motorcycle Diaries, there's a speech that gets basically shortened, or where he says, everybody from Argentina to the Rio Grande is one people and we need to unify. It's not true. We're completely different people from Argentina.
And the thing is like, Alyssa, because you're very down with anti-blackness as well. Their histories were erased, and in a weird way, that benefited them in their ability to organize, because you could unite behind their lost history. I feel, and because ours are so tied to what we could still read, and hell, in the fucking rocks carved into the earth. We could still see our what we are, and some people want to hold on to that.
Practice as well,
right?
Things like that.
So that's one thing that Black folk I feel have above, like, better than us generally culturally, which is that they can figure out a way to put their shit aside, because, quite frankly, they don't know the specifics because it was taken from them, stolen from them.
We don't know our specifics,
but we know. But we're only Mexicans are only several thousand years old. We can figure it out a little bit. We have Zapata. We have those things.
No, I think that Marco is right about that. We don't know the specifics of our history. I do think that you are a little bit wrong on this one. You are right that the idea of classism and racism just being so prevalent. Like I think Brown versus the Board of Education is like the 70s.
Right.
Like, it is a unifying factor. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to us as Mexicans, like, I shared an article once that was like, the Texas Rangers are literal monsters for what they did to Mexican Americans. Right. And everybody was, yeah.
Like everybody in the valley knows them. Like I would always tell like black people like, hey man, like they hung you guys from tree and they dragged us from horses. Like we're kind of on the same team.
Right. We are on this. Yeah, there's a lot of teams that we share, a lot of common goals that we should be teaming up on, but because we're stupid, can't get out of our own way.
You're right.
It's weird that when you guys are mentioning the Afro identity or the lack of that, they don't have their history, and I'm kind of like, dude, that literally sounds like us. Like we don't know where we're from.
we don't know where we're from. We don't know about the massacres that happened in like Para Venid and stuff like that. Like we don't know like as much as we think we know, and that's also something that I feel that needs to be put out there. Like the whole idea, and like as much as this is a very idealist version of like Coco, it's like, oh yeah, that's your grandma. That's your grandma's grandma. Like we don't actually have that. At least I don't. Like I know my grandma and that's it. Like I don't have like a history of what happened. In fact, it gets dark past my grandparents. It's like, it's like they were chased out. They were this, they were that. Like it's ugly past my grandparents.
Right.
What were you guys say, Alyssa?
Yeah.
What I was gonna say is that yes, while we do unite on that front, I think the one thing that kind of jumbles everything and that kind of turns everyone against each other, so to speak, is just not recognizing that while this is a unifying thing, every culture has its own struggle in its own way. And we all need to kind of come to terms with that, I guess, instead of trying to just lump everyone into creating a solution, a one-size-fits-all solution, basically.
See, the only thing I have against that, which is the people that we're trying to convince don't know the difference between the different struggles. We know because we feel it and we know it intimately. Mm-hmm. So, and this is where I tend to skew from the general accepted progressive ideas when it comes to these types of things. But I feel solid foot to stand on, which is if we're just trying to convince ourselves, we can do that. We can specify our different struggles in specific ways, and we can tell the Cubans have their own problems, the Puerto Ricans have their own problems, the El Salvadorians have their own problems, and we have our own. Mexicans have their own. But if we're trying to convince everyone else, and in the sense that, hey, stop shooting us in the face. Hey, stop not letting us buy homes in certain areas. Hey, stop calling us rapists and all that nonsense. Our message has to be in some way united. Civil rights movement, that was united and it was broad and it had specific demands that ultimately weren't met, but it was still something that got, you said, the needle moving. Activism gets the needle moving. And as it is right now, first and foremost, we can't figure out what we want in the first place. We're too busy trying to figure out, Chicanos are mad at Latinxs, Latinxs are mad at Chicanos, and we're fighting amongst ourselves over fucking titles, where it shouldn't even fucking matter because, hey, guess what? They're still beating people on the border. They're still cutting bottles of water open so these people dehydrate and die in the desert. So until we get that together, we got to come up with something unified, so that the message is more broad and that people can consume it easier. I've always been a proponent of simple messages. Yeah, go ahead. I'll finish this point up and then do it. When you look at like the farm workers, their messages were simple. Si se puede, viva la huelga. It was all very coin catchphrasey, almost advertising. I think we could benefit from a little bit of that, and I think we got to figure out what that would be to help all of us just to get the ball rolling before we can get into specifics. Let us get into some power. Let us get some power, and then we can sculpt it to what we need it to be. That's my viewpoint.
For sure. And I think we kind of have the same viewpoint. It's just kind of the steps are backwards.
Right.
As a step two, I see like us, within, different Latino cultures having to get our shit together with like our colorism and, all this. We have the past traumas that we've go through generations after generations. Like, one thing that I will touch on is Mexican machismo.
Yep.
It affects both, women and men in the Mexican culture. Women have a specific role, and
men die of heart disease because we don't go to the doctor.
Exactly. And I feel like machismo kind of also touches on, one thing that I've been able to kind of realize, speaking with different people that have opposing views than me, Latinos specifically, Mexicanos, is that like that whole, for whatever reason, that bootstrap mentality is kind of tied with machismo for
Right.
whatever. Yeah.
Pride. It's pride. It's really ugly pride, selfish pride.
Yeah. And, one thing that I will say, Marco said earlier, he thinks that action is, or not much can be done through the ballot box. It has to be through, direct action and protest. And I 1,000% agree with that. I do, but I also think that there are some things that can be done politically, like, moving that small needle, like the whole Brown versus Board of Education, like those things were done politically to advance us. And, hypothetically speaking, like we shouldn't have to be going through these things, like we shouldn't have to be proving in a court of law that, brown people matter. But at the end of the day, we have to get to that point. It can't just be 0 to 100. And I 1,000% believe that we should defund the police, but with with Prop B right now in San Antonio with Fix SAPD, it's a reformist idea, but at the same time, it's a small step in the right direction, and that's why I back that small reformist idea.
And Marco, I know where you're going because I feel the same way, brother. So let me temper it because I'm right in the middle of both of you, because I do think you need pieces of paper to let people know what the rule is.
Well,
but then direct action is the way. But here's what I want to say, because direct action does work, but a lot of people got to die. And that's
let's just hear what Marco has.
I just want to temper it with that, because I see the way you want to go with the signs, and you want to go to the face of the place that you're protesting and look the people in the face. That's how I want to do it, but I'm terrified because I'm a wuss and a target. So that's why I want to lead you in with that. I want to lead you in with that because I get you.
So how can I debate this the simplest form? We have a democratic everything right now, right? Why ain't shit changing?
Because the Democrats, so I saw this really great tweet the other fucking day. It has a bottle of Windex and then a Gatorade, and they poured both into Gatorade bottles, and it's like, vote Democrat, vote blue, no matter who the fuck it is, and I feel that way about the mayor of San Antonio. He's a Democrat, he stands up for gay rights and everything, but at the end of the day, he's meeting with the police union behind closed doors because he thinks it's going to further his campaign. Democrats are just as fucking crooked. Like, I 100% agree, but I'm talking specifically about not necessarily people, but like laws and things that fall into place.
Like what laws when the Constitution wasn't made for us?
No, absolutely. But like when it comes to
like, you know what I thought was awesome that Brazil did? They fucking lit everything on fire, and then they all of a sudden started rewriting the Constitution.
And I mean, what happened here? They burned down a police station, and suddenly Democrats are introducing all of these bills onto the floor. I 1,000% agree, but from a local level,
it's act locally, think globally.
I'll agree with you in the sense that, like, on the local level, that
right,
when people get involved, like the direct action that they do, I've seen it work and I've seen it change. But I feel like we're still getting crumbs, man.
Absolutely.
Why are we still getting treated like second class citizens? And like just because we get to go to school now, like we're better.
It's
the board versus Brown of Education or whatever was actually started in San Antonio with the Gonzalez against Texas or some shit like that.
Right.
But that never gets brought up.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that goes back to us not knowing the history, and then we are about sadly out of time.
Just getting spicy. Come on.
This is why you tune in next. Well, not next week. This is a bi-weekly podcast, but it's just so I think that we got. It's of all funny things to happen of this podcast. I didn't expect Alyssa not be radical enough is a thing that would happen, but
that's what we like. No, but that's what we like. That's what we need.
What's really interesting is that I fundamentally
agree.
I believe that we should fucking drag them. We don't need billionaires, but are billionaires going to fucking give up their money? Absolutely not. What are we going to have to do? Drag them out of the fucking house and do whatever we need to. But
right.
The point of it is that I'm also a realist, and people like, working with Fix ACD, people are so fucking scared of the phrase, like, defund the police. And, like, with radical action, I just feel like it's
I know
give or
why.
take.
I know why. To my point, defund the police sounds scary and it's not good for advertising.
But let's just let me bring it home. Everything's gonna be fine. I promise. Just follow me. So, what the whole idea for this podcast, actually, of all places, and this is gonna piss off Sam, came from the Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah, pissed off. I'm definitely pissed off because fuck Joe Rogan.
Okay, but you do like Ashy Larry?
Donnell Rollins, yes.
Yes. So he had this thing where he talked about that when white people make a podcast, other white people jump in to help them. They help promote them. They do all this other stuff so that they succeed. But he was like, when black people make a podcast, there ain't no one to help you. No one supports you. They're just like, whatever, dude. No one wants to hear you talk. That is doubly true if you're Mexican. I can't think of one Mexican with a podcast. I know your friend was on another one, but
I was really gonna say, like, how to discredit any Mexican, right? Like, you could have a college degree or whatever, and they go,
yeah, no, that's it. Because I've seen
graduated from Harvard.
No, I see it because I've met people in the space and like, yeah, I'm Mexican. I have a podcast, 300 people followers, and they're doing good work. And it's like, okay, we gotta find them. We gotta find them because they're hiding somewhere. The people that are like us, and that's why I invented the Mexcellence. This was actually the core reason. I know we do a lot of nonsense in movies and other commentary, but this is the meat and
first
potatoes
thing that you've done towards this, which is like, this is para la gente. This is for us to communicate, and I'm so glad that of all people, Marco was able to come here because he's been doing this for years down in the valley. And this is what we need. If you want to make a political change, sometimes first you got to make a cultural change. You got to get people together. Can you imagine what would have happened if Selena was the big cultural hit that she was, and then afterwards would be like, hey, we should form our own political party or something like that? Like, right. That's what
I think we gotta use our platforms, right? And I don't want to take credit. I don't like saying like I do this and I do that. Like our band does it, right? Like the Skags are an autonomous group. We all do the work. We all contribute to helping our community. It's not like I did this forever. Like it's a very collective group. I love that we make all the decisions in our band. Everybody's treated as equals. I do want to say that this is as much as I'll agree with you, Alyssa.
We'll take it. We'll take it.
In our band, we vote, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody has a vote, mm-hmm. and that's like the fairest thing we do. But even in like, so when we talk about direct change and direct action and stuff like that, we're never promoting like fucking like, hey, support this bill or whatever. We're supporting, or we're asking people to support like the very basic needs, right? Like
make safe funds and stuff, right?
We'll make safe spaces for like people, right? Like in our shows, like we make sure that people get called out and shit like that. Like we want to make sure that people feel safe and comfortable in the spaces. We want people to know that their rights as workers. We want people to know that there's someone that will support you if there's like if you need to get an abortion. Like we want people to see us as a resource, not just a band. And for us doing that, I feel like we're supporting the community, and I think people like us because of that. And it's just like a mutual, like, so that's literally mutual aid. That's what mutual aid is. Like mutual aid gets thrown around a lot. Like I don't like the term a lot, or I don't like the way the term's been used because people seem to think that it's charity. It's not charity. Mm-hmm. Mutual aid, when we help each other out and we're trying to uplift everyone, not just like one person, like.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with it whatsoever. Like, there are, community fridges, popping up all around, San Antonio. And I've seen it firsthand. Like, when we lost all the power, our fucking politicians didn't do shit. It was all
Right.
the mutual aid
Right.
people who were running around and making sure that everyone was okay, and door knocking, and finding people with big trucks and being trying to deliver diapers and formula and blankets to people. And absolutely, like, I 1000% believe that the power lies, within the people.
I'm very blessed, and I say blessed to have a very beautiful circle of friends and people that love doing that type of work. So I know that if I ever need help, like in trying to help the community, like the help's there, man.
Yeah.
Like all I gotta do is ask, and everybody's willing to do fucking anything. Like when we're doing, I remember there's like for all those causes that we have, like dude, we were blasting a bunch of like for the benefits for we're doing benefit shows for like the 43 that were disappeared from Mexico. They ended up doing a tour like towards over here like in Edinburgh.
Mm-hmm.
We've done a bunch of abortion fundraisers. Thanks to Denny. Denny's the one that leads those, and she like organizes all these groups and puts us all kind of into shape so she can so they can support women getting access to abortion since all the clinics are closed here in South Texas.
Right.
So I think that we need a lot of that, and I think that we got to start. Like I'm not concerned about the politician in the city of McAllen. I'm more concerned at the more grassroots, at the root of all this, because I can't focus on that.
Right.
Like it's there's more need in our spaces than the things that are going. I mean, yes, those things affect me, but there's more things being affected in little spaces.
Right.
Well, this is my small way of using my small platform of trying to bring a spotlight to that.
You mean highly successful #1 ranked Chicano, Latino, Latinx podcast in
there's
America?
actually not a lot of Chicano podcasts to begin with.
Which is why we're probably in the top tier. We're working on being #1. Coming soon.
But the overall thing is that, like, I'm trying to break it down for people like us. And I'm trying to the other podcast that I primarily work on is a political podcast where it's just like trying to break down those issues for people like us as well. And I think between those parts and between the fun shit that we do on the side, I think that's the best that we can do. And I'm hoping, and I'm going to use you a little bit as a role model, that I want to do more stuff in the community like that. I want to learn how to organize. I want to learn how, just because Governor Abbott doesn't want to do shit, like, I mean, I want to do more than just lift shit whenever another snowstorm happens and it's like, oh, all right, let me help you. Let me push your car out of the stuff. Like, I want to at least, like how you said, build the community so that we can help each other through thick and thin.
Small acts, man. Like, don't romanticize this. Like pushing someone's car or whenever they're stopped, like that's a lot, dude.
Yeah.
Helping somebody whenever they need help, like buying a plate of food for your friend.
I do that all the time.
Yep.
Yeah. those little things like help so much, man. Like it's all about building relationships, and it's not about being fake, man. It's just about being honest,
right?
Like being friends.
Well, that is 100% what we're here is being sincere. And man, I loved having you on this podcast. I loved having you speak. I loved both of you guys for coming back. Thanks. This is the first episode of O Menos Mexicanos.
Right.
The chat looked like they were having fun, even though it's mostly Carlos. Just
no, but we've had people coming in and sticking around, and so I want to thank you, Marcos, of course, or MJ, for hosting the show, for coming up with the concept and putting an idea I had for a long time into actual paper and physical show programming. Alyssa, thank you for coming in and giving your delightful insight. You were a pleasure to have on as well, and we're gonna have you on again for this one. And Marco, God, what a way to start. I love it, man. I really love what you're about. I love what you're doing. And I want you to have you. I want to have you back on again when we get this show a little more polished, so we can kind of get this a little more pointed, like an obsidian blade, and and that way we can get into the meat of it, because I know you're a real smart guy, and I want to see more of what you want to talk about and get to.
Oh, stop!
Hey, man. Hey. But I do appreciate everybody for listening and watching. It's time for the outros. Marcos, no, God damn it! It's so hard. I've yet to get it down. MJ,
Yes, sir.
Where can they find you?
All they got to do is type JL Marco 62 into anything, including Words with Friends, and I'll pop up. Downstairs, Alyssa, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter and Instagram at @Ali_bun. Also, if you want to follow my vinyl DJing, it's Strawberry Jams Vinyl.
We do. Strawberry Jams Vinyl. Follow it.
Mostly on Instagram. We have a Twitter, but we don't tweet.
Promote your stuff. This is the part where you shill your favorite things, such as Marco and his band that we talked about, but didn't actually go into everything, and any shows coming up. I know COVID times. I don't know where you're going to be at, but yeah, go ahead and plug what you got to plug, man.
We're kind of in like I don't want to say a hiatus. We're kind of like on a break right now because of COVID. It's kind of been difficult for all of our mental health. It is an 8-piece band, so it's kind of like intense. But you can definitely find us at Cagando Palo. We are on Instagram at Cagando Palo, and Los Skagaleros on Facebook, and we left it at Los Skagaleros. We actually had the @ symbol.
I saw that. I did see that
for the longest times, but it's very hard to put that on like
access finding it. Yeah, SEO.
Yeah, but it's cool. Like we wanted to make sure that everyone felt welcomed whenever we made our band, and I know that they brought up the X thing, but like I don't know if we've ever like talked or had a discussion about like switching those to X's.
Right.
And you haven't voted on that one yet.
Exactly.
No.
Not yet. All right.
Well, because we think that the @ symbol kind of says both. It's like it's speaking of the duality.
Right. You know? And I thought that too. If we're going to go back to it, last little epilogue. Yeah, I like the @ is definitely both and all, I would say. But
and I think a lot of people like I've had people come up to us and be like, "Oh, you're from Las Cagaleras," and I love like whenever they switch it up.
Mm-hmm.
Because like and I always tell them like that's our band, or Los Skagaleros, like we always tell them like or Los Skagaleros, however you want to pronounce it, it's up to you.
Right.
And like people are very like cool about it.
All right. Well,
you find me at Shipley's Art. I have a page.
Yeah, you
do art.
Yeah, well that little spaceman is mine.
Wait, so hold on.
I thought you bought it like saying
no.
I didn't know you make art.
Said he made it. How do you spell it?
At Shipley's Art. Like the Shipley's Donuts.
Oh, I got the Shipley's Donuts. Shipley. I didn't even know that was the thing. Hold on. Let me just find it so I can get you here. Is it Instagram, Shipley's with the S?
Art, yeah.
All right. There we go, Marco. There you go. All right. Ali beat me to it. All right. There we go. And I'll put it all in the description. Oh, man, that's real good stuff. I might have to commission you for things. Anyway, another time, another conversation. All right, then, Marcos, take us out of here.
How do we? Oh, the other guy. Sorry.
I don't know.
I thought you were gonna pull out your saxophone and play us out. Like that's.
I've been put in so many awkward positions with that damn saxophone.
It's because it's the best instrument. It's all about that sax.
I was asked to play like in a hardcore band once, and I remember being like super confused, but they were like so into it.
Well, on that note, we don't got no sax.
Conversation for another time.
Everybody
probably not on a podcast, but I would love to hang out with you and grab a beer with you, and then we can talk about grindcore and stuff like that if you want.
Yeah, it was interesting.
But until then, let's wave bye to everybody on the video, and we'll see you all next time.
Adios. Follow us tomorrow for Tommy McGrew.
McGrew's Reviews. Come back. We have McGrew's Reviews tomorrow?
Tomorrow, we're doing Oscar pre-show.
Come join us. All right, everybody. Bye for real. Bye.